Hello there and welcome to Faceoff. I am Neota Egbe. Now, this is that platform where we almost always, get to see the two sides of every issue as it pertains to policy, governance, and general living in Nigeria. Welcome. Today we'll look at something that bothers not just the young, but the young at heart and even the old at heart as well. We're looking at the social media. In January 2012, the social media played a major role in the protests that led to the downward review of the fuel price from over 100 naira to 97 naira per litre. Now, after that, many came up with the notion that the social media was the voice of the masses, and indeed, many could speak. You could take a picture and post it on Facebook from wherever you are. You could tweet whatever it is you wanted to tweet about. You could reach as many as you wanted to reach. By just one simple sentence, you could say so much to so many people. But how effective has this been? Has it been positively effective or negatively effective? The Arab Spring began with someone posting something out on Facebook using a telephone. But beyond these positives that have brought about changes around the world, there have been some negatives. Back here in Nigeria, the issue of the young lady that was killed by a group of people she met or by friends she met on Facebook, people she never knew. She just jumped up and came to visit them all the way across the country. After that, other issues in Nigeria, for instance, protests around the world concerning a movie that was posted on YouTube. Then, insult. According to the Senate president, the leadership in Nigeria being abused on Facebook uncontrollably. Would you say indeed that there ought to be some restriction on social media in Nigeria and indeed around the world? Would it help in any way? Would it stifle the voice of the masses if there is some restriction? Or would it be just a way of letting the people know that when you go onto social media, it should be for something positive? Well, these are some of the questions we hope that will be answered today. And I have two gentlemen in the studio who happen to be strikers, let me use the word. Let me borrow from Tony Bitoye. Strikers on the field of the social media. On my left is Tolu Ogunlesi, a journalist and IT specialist. Welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And did I say on my right? On my left, rather. Okay. And on my right, I have Benga Chesson, an IT specialist. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Gentlemen, on Face-Off, usually you have the opportunity to give your opening statements for 30 seconds. So you would start that now, and I'll begin with you. You are saying there shouldn't be any form of restriction on social media, and he insists there should be. So you give your opening statement first.
Okay, so
30 seconds.
Social media is the new platform where people can express themselves. Okay, there's a reason why all the nations of the world agreed that it's a fundamental human right for people to be able to express themselves, regardless of platform. Either I speak the word, or I write the word, or I express it via any channel. But guess what? It's a fundamental human right for me to express myself, and there should be no restriction whatsoever.
Okay. Tolu?
My argument is this. Social media is an extension of human society. Human society does not exist without regulations, without guidance. So I don't see why social media, which is simply an extension of human society, should exist without some form of guidance or regulation.
All right, thank you very much. Well, gentlemen, we'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll continue with this discussion. Should there be some form of restriction on social media in Nigeria? You too can be a part of the discussion, indeed, on the social media restrictions. Join us on any of our handles on Twitter, at Faceoff Today, or at Neota Egbe. Send in your comments discussing restricting social media in Nigeria. And I have two gentlemen, players on that field, who are here to say, one says, don't do it. The other one says, go ahead and do it. So it's time for them to ask the questions, and we'll hopefully get some answers. So Tolu, you ask the first question, and Benga must answer.
Yes, Benga, your argument is that social media should not in any way absolutely be restricted.
Sure.
Do you agree with me that social media is a tool, maybe like a gun? I mean, it's not a gun, of course, but it's a tool. Yeah. So when we look at the examples of, for example, the gun debates in the U.S., I mean, guns, they will say guns don't kill people, people kill people. But guns are potentially harmful. Guns are also useful for self-defense. if we follow that analogy and said social media is a tool, and it's a tool that can be used, for good and for evil, on the basis of that, how do you argue that it should be left completely to the whims of individuals?
Okay, two things. One, water kills, but we need water. And nobody would say because there was some flooding in a particular area, or because, somebody drowned in water or whatever, because of that, nobody should have access to water. Same thing with money. I mean, we know money can be used for many terrible things, but people wake up every day trying to earn a living. Social media is a tool, yes.
No, but I'm sorry, I have to come in there.
Yes.
When you talk about why do we have water board regulating the usage of water?
I was going
why
to
do you have CBN
I was just waiting for Benga to
money
land.
regulation?
So,
Go ahead.
Speaking of water board regulating water, does the water board tell you you have to use X liters of water per day? They don't. You take as much as you want. If what you get is not enough, you go to get more. And the point I'm even coming to is the fact that, yes, social media is like a tool. But the fact that it's a tool means that it gives everybody the right to use it the way they want. Now, it's the same thing. It's like speech. It's like speech. We have access to freedom of speech. Absolutely. It's the same thing.
But there are
Speech
also
is
libel
also a tool.
laws. There are libel laws that guide what people
Libel
say.
laws also apply to social media. So if you feel that
absolutely.
someone has said something terrible, then take them to court.
Yeah.
But to say that I shouldn't say something I want to say is getting into my private space, and I'll say shush.
Well, to be honest, I mean, I must make it clear. I don't think this is a debate about censorship. I should say that I am not myself one for censorship. But I am also not for, as I would explain, as I said in my opening statement, human beings, human society has guidelines, laws, regulations that guide what people do. I can get into my car, start the car, and go to VI, but there are lights that will stop me. There are guidelines that ensure that I do not act in a way that would injure or potentially injure other human beings. So how do we suddenly get into the social media space, Benga, and,
we now want to remove
jettison completely any idea of some form of regulation or guidance or penalties for misbehaviors?
There are penalties already.
Yeah.
So if I tweet something or I post a picture on Facebook, I can be sued. I can be taken to court for that. But what we're saying is, when it comes to using social media, because the argument in Nigeria, by the way, for example, of course, it's all been denied. The Senate president, in quotes, said that social media should be banned. Of course, that was later denied. And the idea was it has become a platform for people to abuse government. And people are abusing government a lot. And and what I said at the time is very simple, that you haven't even seen all of the expressions that people want to give. Right now, the expressions that are being seen on social media are by the people who have access to some of the information. A very good example. Right now, people think that National Assembly members earn a certain amount of money. If the real amount of money being earned is revealed, the question would not be, should people say the things they want to say or abuse or not? The question would be, okay, even you may even begin to abuse yourself. So when it comes to social media, there are those green lights, the amber, the red, and all
there's
that.
this notion that power without control means death. Because social media is, as you said, is power. Is the voice of the masses. It's power in the hands of the masses. But without control, it means death, even to the masses.
It's the same thing with speech. So with speech, the control is from you as an individual. You know what the punishment is going to be.
Do you think Nigerians will control themselves when they are angry?
I belong to this. I have a theory that human stupidity is unlimited, in the sense that human beings will typically, have no limits to the kind of stupid things. And when I say human beings, including myself. So, for example, and we all, you're on BlackBerry Messenger, Benga. You get these messages all the time. So a few days ago, for example, I got a message saying that someone had been kidnapped, and so I got a message saying that with an account number, saying that the kidnappers have demanded a certain amount. We need to raise funds for this person, send money to this account number. For me, that was absolutely unbelievable. Like, how did we get to this place? To think that you cannot. How do we stop people from pushing their stupidity? Pardon that, to the limits. Yeah. On social media. Okay. It doesn't have to be, I am telling people, I mean, I'm not saying that there should be a Twitter or a social media censorship board or anything, but how do we, whether it's by forms of penalties or whatever, how do we
he talked about if you put some things that are not right, you could be sued to court. Is that the kind of restriction you're asking for? Is that the kind of regulation you're asking for? Are you asking for laws?
That's part of it. Laws are part of it. That's not all there is to it.
Tolu, the fact is technology in itself, I mean products of technology, in a way have provisions for how to solve the problem you're talking about. So you don't want to see the stupidity from people on BBM. You don't want to see the folly of 140 characters on Twitter. You can mute so you don't listen to them. You can unfriend people. You can, or if you want to call it, defriend them. So social media is like, the connections on social media are like the human connections, the natural connections. You're connected to this person, who is connected to this person, who is connected to this person. But if someone suddenly within your circle is a criminal, it doesn't mean you're going to stop being friends with everyone that you know. But there's always a way in nature, how you cut people off. And it's the same thing with social media. So if I'm following you on Twitter, for example, and I see that, and I do this all the time. So I'm following you and you say things that I feel, this is not adding value to me. In fact, this is probably, taking me into a negative space or something like that. I can easily unfollow you.
But that's at the simpler end of the spectrum. That's about people saying things that you don't like. Now, when we are talking about people saying things like, for example, things that take the genocide in Rwanda, for example. This was long before the days of social media, but the media still played a part. People went on radio to say that, these people are enemies, they are cockroaches, kill them,
quick question,
cut them down.
Is there still radio on Rwanda today?
I assume there is.
Absolutely. And the reason is very simple, because radio, yes, has been used as a tool to call people cockroaches.
But there are restrictions. No, there are restrictions. It's like in Nigeria, there's restrictions. NBC tells you don't say this, you cannot say this, you can't do that. The kind of things you say on radio. There is a form of regulation. I'm sure that's what Tolu is talking about.
Now, in terms of, so NBC says to you, you can't say this and you can't say that. But what NBC cannot say to you, for example, is, I go to a radio station and I have a personal opinion. NBC cannot say, I can't say what my personal opinion is. That's not possible.
Okay, let's move from this. This is potentially safe. Let's move. Now, let's use the example of the London riots.
Good.
About a year ago, August last year. Many of the messages that went out were actually planned. In fact, the bulk of them, there were lots on Facebook and Twitter, but a lot of them were on BlackBerry Messenger. People actually planning, saying, look, guys, this is the next hit. Let's gather at 7 p.m. and all that. At the end of it, what did the makers of BlackBerry Research in Motion do? They actually came out to say that they were going to hand over data to the UK government. Is that correct?
You're right. I'm listening.
Yeah. Now, on that, let's take that as an example. What do you think? Do you think, going by your argument, that shouldn't be possible?
That's absolutely wrong.
That's absolutely
wrong of the UK government to restrict communication. And I'll say two key things.
No, that's not what they did, or that's not what I'm aware that they did. So this was after the fact. People had sent these messages and passed them on, and so they were investigating, and they needed to. I mean, it's just like when you get a permission to search somebody's house. As far as I'm concerned, searching somebody's phone, in that case, can be likened to getting a warrant to search a house, for example.
Yes.
But if I go by what you're saying that no, there should be no forms
of... It's not even that. Let me see if I can help you here. I'm not taking your side anyway, but let me see. Right now, there are protests all around the world about a certain film that was posted on the social media platform. I mean, if there were some regulations as regards, you said something about you're voicing your opinion. The regulatory body cannot stop you because it's your opinion. But I'm sure the regulatory body will stop you if that opinion is going to harm practically the entire nation or the world at large, because that film posted on social media has caused riots around the world. And yet you still say there shouldn't be any form of regulation?
Restriction is different from regulation.
Oh, but if there is regulation, that means there is restriction.
No. What we're saying is this. So, I'm voicing my opinion. For example, I have already voiced my opinion, which is the example of what Uli gave. I've voiced my opinion. Is it right for people to then track my data? Two key things. One is the fact that they can make the request. It is their choice to make the request.
Absolutely.
But it is my right to have my own privacy. It's like you've been in a hotel room and they plant cameras all over the hotel room watching you because they want to be sure that there's safety and security all over the country. Yes, there are things that you were scared of. Yes, there's security and all that. But there's also my privacy. And that's why many companies across the world make sure that even when this data is requested, they communicate with the owner of the data and say, guess what? Your data has been requested for. And that's why many companies across the world publish information every year of the governments that request for data and all that. And one of the very many reasons why I believe that restriction should not even be discussed when it comes to social media is two things. Number one, history. Every time that restriction has started, we know how it ends. It becomes a tool in the hands of the powerful. And the second thing is in terms of the context of the Nigerian environment. If today, I mean, the few times that we've heard about restriction, or let's restrict, or let's ban, or whatever, it came mostly from the powerful. Because there was information that they saw from the less powerful being released and provoking action that they wanted to prevent. So those are, some of the reasons why I say, you know what, don't even think about it. Because once you think about it, there's a reason behind always restricting. When it comes to social media, there's always a reason behind any country or any, corporate entity trying to say they want to restrict.
Where does pornography, for example, come into this? Where do internet scams and that kind of stuff, where do they come? If we are going to leave the social media space completely unpoliced, how do we, that today, as things stand, there's no mechanism for making sure, for example, that an underage person does not access a pornographic site. Yes,
just as you can't always be too sure that anybody buying a bottle of drink is under 18.
But you can make an attempt to be sure that people who are buying a bottle of Star are above the age of 18 or 21.
It's the same way companies make you tick a box that says, are you above 13? You click yes or no.
Okay, we're still talking restricting social media in Nigeria. So far, it appears Benga is winning the game and Tolu is lagging behind. I know some people are out there watching the Champions League, but hey, we're talking issues that bother Nigeria. So, Benga, your turn to fire your first set of questions.
Okay. Tolu, you are very popular on social media, aren't you?
Well.
Do you think that your account is a restricted account?
In some way it is.
How?
Because I've, consciously or unconsciously, there's some form of self-regulation.
Which is what he's been preaching.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
that you know what to say. You know when to stop.
I think that I know what to say. I think I know when to stop. I think so. But we cannot allow human...
Do you need Abuja to say to you that you should... I mean, of course, this is ridiculous. This won't happen. Yeah. You must post only 20 tweets per day, or there's certain topics you shouldn't touch. So don't talk about the health of the president's wife, because there are countries that say that.
Oh, yeah,
you cannot talk about it. You can't flog any issue that concerns national security because of its implications. Or you can't express your opinion because it is going to hurt someone.
Absolutely. There are lots of countries. I mean, China, North Korea, there's Egypt during the sometime last
Arab
year,
Spring.
pulled the plug on mobile networks for a day. But I consider that censorship. That's not what I'm advocating. But I'm saying that, it goes back to the analogy I started with. Human society, our encounters with ourselves are all have guidelines and regulations that guide them. We cannot leave all of these things to self-regulation. Oh, I think that, Benga has loaned me $1 million. I think that I should pay him at 4%. Oh, no, he thinks that he should collect it back at 10%. We cannot leave things. We have seen what happens when you leave people completely to decide
so
what they think is offensive and what is not.
Let me use your example of 4%, the banking loan.
Yeah.
So did this happen suddenly? Somebody just thought, you know what, we need to restrict the way these people give themselves loans. You must begin to use 4%.
No.
Or did it evolve based on individual usage and consideration of what's fair and what's not fair?
Yeah, which I think is my point too, that we have done social media enough to see how human beings have used it. We sit in our homes and we hear, oh yes, there's fighting going on. There was the one with the NYSC camp a couple of months ago or sometime last year, where one of the camp in Bauchi, I think, was supposed to have been attacked and all that. Now we're living potentially safe grounds and moving into, places where one tweet can actually make the difference between life and death.
There were broadcasts all over about someone kidnapped, someone accidentally, and it turns out they're not true.
Yeah, there are messages that come in saying that all the melons or apples or whatever from the north are poisoned. That kind of stuff. Now we have seen how social media, we have seen what we can do, our potential to misuse social media. Now, shouldn't there be some way in which, and that's my argument, the government, no, not the government actually.
I was
be
about
careful.
to,
not
I
the
was
government.
about
I take that
to,
back. Not the government. But
okay.
Shouldn't there be some way that there is some form of regulation?
So who will do the regulation?
Question.
Oh, well, I'm happy to answer that. If I'm arguing that there should be, well, so it's an ongoing debate, of course. But let me use this example now. The internet or the World Wide Web, as we know it, is not owned by any one person.
Absolutely,
it's not owned by any one government. That would be a mistake. So I guess it's a consortium of the individuals, governments, organizations, and all that. Because of course, the biggest mistake to make would be to put the internet in the hands of one person. Yes. So, can we adopt that same kind of model in which there is some form of, with journalism, for example, which is also a controversial space, we have stuff like complaints commission. Well, in advanced, in societies that work, we have a press complaints commission, we have an office of an ombudsman. I think we have that here as well. Now, if that is not some form of regulation and restriction, what is it?
That's definitely not regulation.
And that's with journalism, where there's also the same argument, the same noise about, oh no, people should say what they want to say and all that.
Now, Tolu, you used the example of the internet and said, we should do to social media what has been done to the internet.
That kind of model.
Thing is social media is built on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So already, what you're advocating already exists with social media. And why I'm particularly interested in saying, as far as Nigeria is concerned, don't touch it in terms of regulation for social media is, for the first time over many years, this has become a platform where people have been able to participate in democracy. Initially, there was literally no participation because you believed what the media in Nigeria is largely influenced, basically, by what you're able to trace, what you're able to get. And many times, the press statements that come to you, somebody wrote them. But on social media, you're not reacting to a press statement. You're saying what you feel based on what you understand of the conditions and all that. And let's be fair to social media. Yes, there have been cases, and I will come back to the story of Cynthia in a second, why I believe that Cynthia's case has much less to do with social media than has been said so far. Let me even do that now.
Well, I'd love to. Yeah.
Everybody has said that, it's a very sad situation. It shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But guess what? Pen pals, many years ago, wrote letters to each other.
Absolutely.
And met each other. If social media is like a new kind of pen pals scenario, and I'm sure that it would have happened in those days of pen pals, that some people would have met each other and things would have gone awry or gone wrong or something. Will that mean that you would hold, writing responsible for every evil? or for that evil and say, you know what, we need to restrict what people write and how they write. The same thing with social media.
Well, let me come in there. I think that, so with pen pals or social media, look at anonymity, for example, the whole concept of anonymity, and look at how the abuse. I mean, basically, I can go online now under an anonymous name. I can say that Gbenga Sheson embezzled 50,000 or some amount of money.
That's not much.
I can basically go, under anonymity. And in the kind of system in which we are at the moment, there is no way. Absolutely, because of whether it's lack of capacity.
There's no way to defend that.
Well, there's no way. There's no what. How do you, if you, for example, if somebody put that up on a blog post about you, what would you do?
I would respond to it if I need to. If there's a need to respond to it, I respond to it.
And outside of that,
on the political,
and outside of that, is that all you would do? Another blog post saying, I mean, that's almost like the equivalent of saying that, oh yes, if somebody stole my wallet, I would steal another person's own.
No. I'm not stealing somebody else's wallet. I'm going after my wallet to get it back. So if somebody says something that is not true, I have a right to challenge them and say, this is wrong, this is not true. And if I want to press charges, I have the right to press, just like somebody saying something untrue about me. So somebody says, with his mouth or her mouth, says something, I can sue them for libel.
But shouldn't there then be a way to sanction that medium that has allowed, I mean, anonymity is, social media takes anonymity to a whole new level.
But newspapers, articles also can allow you to be anonymous. So people write something. Many times you see people write something and they say, our reporter is the byline, not anybody's name. Or people write something and the name is not true.
But there are channels. I cannot have something in any newspaper. You have to send it to an editor.
Okay.
The editor makes that decision. Social media, all of those barriers, essentially.
There's an editor with social media. The editor is the back end. So, for example, I sign up on Twitter with some information.
Yeah.
And I'm sure what you will say next is, what if the information I give is false?
Okay.
It's the same thing in real life.
Yeah.
I can literally be somebody else I want to be. I can be a Tolu Ogunlesi tomorrow.
Oh, yeah,
all I need to do is create an ID card.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there's no social security number for me to start working the files to get. So I become, anonymity is not here because of social media. Anonymity has always existed. People have always, I mean, we heard the story recently of a man who has actually even been living on somebody else's social security number that died a very long time ago. So, and that's not, the person started that even before social media came. And that's my point, that social media is a new opportunity and we need to understand it as such. It's the opportunity that people have to express themselves, to connect with people, to get information, to get today's news today, for example, not today's news tomorrow, when it's already almost too late in the 21st century.
Okay, I have a tweet here from IC Academy. It says, restriction of social media is unnecessary because like any free speech, everyone is responsible for his or her own words. Do you agree with that?
I guess, there's some element of semantics here. I guess the words that people, so as I say again, this is not an argument for censorship or about censorship, but it's an argument, still going back to that if human society has, is not, people are not, people are not allowed or permitted to live their lives, without some form of regulation. It's not possible. So I still don't understand why we then suddenly get to the whole issue of social media, for example, and then, get a bit touchy. Nobody should tell you what to tweet, what not to tweet, yeah? Yes?
Yes.
But we have seen the extent to which, look, Benga, your example was that if somebody says something that is not correct about you, you will go on. Now, so there's a whole, sometimes it can be, fairly harmless stuff, where you can go and say no. Sometimes these things are potentially life and career damaging things. In the society in which we live in, we know that nothing happens. It's a jungle.
But that's an expression of the circumstances on ground.
Okay.
Without the internet. So
yes, it is. Yeah.
From time immemorial, Nigerians have subscribed to the rumor mill as the largest avenue of getting information.
Yeah.
somebody says, oh, that building belongs to certain ex-governor,
Yeah.
and it becomes a story.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So you can't, and you said something about people don't live their lives without restriction, but people do. Nobody restricts you. Nobody tells you, I mean, you don't have to get to the office at a certain time. You choose to get to the office at a certain time
Well,
because
no, not exactly.
you choose to. Because there are people who decide, you know what, today I'm tired, I don't want to get there, and I will bear the consequences.
But yeah, that's not the same analogy then as deciding, for example, to tweet something potentially malicious or to post something potentially malicious.
But like I said,
going to the office at
if-
what time or whatever.
If you tweet
it's-
something
No, but
malicious,
there are
then you
regulations
should-
as regards going to the office
Now-
at the time. There are times you get there and you'll be fired.
That's
It's-
fine.
oh, no,
Even,
okay.
So
even in
there
the
is-
regulated
so a doctor-
environment, the human
You can
still
do
has
that.
a choice.
But
A
when
medical
he has that
doctor-
choice, he's punished.
That's
There are
the point.
deductions or
So
suspensions.
that's
that
the
could come.
point.
And a
That
surgeon,
you
a
choose-
surgeon will not decide to go to the hospital anytime he wants.
Oh, but doctors in Lagos don't choose at some point.
Well, I mean,
Okay,
now-
all right, gentlemen, I'm completely out of time, so you have like 30 seconds to close each. But now, Jide Ajayi, Wealth Jide said, Benga is killing it. Tolu Ogunlesi, to me, regulation implies killing the voice of mankind. Any reaction?
I mean, well, it goes back to my point. It's a fine line, of course, that between censorship but I don't think that we can afford to, using the examples, for example, from London, the examples of even with stuff that has happened. Now, one quick example with the Cynthia issue. The fact that we even have a database today of all telephone numbers in Nigeria, for me, is a kind of restriction. In one sense, in that it allows potentially, unlike before, where you could walk into a store or call somebody on the street and buy a mobile phone number. So that's the kind of regulation I'm talking about.
Okay.
The fact that we have a database and that people know that you can, if I use a number, that number can be traced back to me. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you so much. 30 seconds each to close. Yeah, 30 seconds.
Absolutely. There is no reason why we should talk about restriction when it comes to social media. I've given two strong reasons and I'll repeat one of them. One is the fact that Nigeria is a growing democracy. This is the platform that has given Nigerians, for the first time, more than almost anything else, young, old, female, male, whatever, everyone has been able to take information, react to it, and, if possible, act based on the collective decision.
Your turn.
We have obviously not counted the cost of the damaging use of social media. And maybe because, as Benga said, it's just evolving, it's just starting. Someday, hopefully, we'll be able to catalog all of the damaged lives and careers and,
Marriages
lost
destroyed,
souls that have been
families
destroyed
destroyed.
because people have taken social media and misused it. But then again, I'm not calling for censorship. I will never call for censorship. But I think that if human society outside of social media is regulated, I don't see why social media, which is an extension of human life, should not undergo some form of regulation.
Okay, thank you very much. I am Rem Raj. Thank you for sending your tweet. Your opinion on social media shouldn't be restricted. Thank you so much. Yikes Okagbemi, that is Yinku says, our government hates social media because it reveals fast truth about them. UK Prime Minister is on Twitter too. Well, thank you so much, everyone that sent it. Obajon, thank you. And every other person that sent in their tweet, we really do appreciate it. We'll bring you another edition of the program, same time next week. Until then, remember to regulate yourself. Don't wait to be regulated. Have yourself a good night.